They were so happy then, all smiles. That day when John Cohen introduced Hugh Freeze as the Auburn head coach, some people had hope. Some of us saw the truth. Some of us realized it was not going to work, that Hugh Freeze's best days as a college football coach were well behind him when he stood there on that stage, gripping that jersey with his name on the back, grinning alongside John Cohen. Why were those men smiling? We can ask that today now that the Hugh Freeze error, yes, I said error, not era, at Auburn football has ended after 34 games, 19 of them defeats, the most humiliating of those defeats coming Saturday night in Jordan-Hare Stadium when the man known for offense couldn't muster a single touchdown against one of the worst defenses in the country that gave up 50-plus the week before to Tennessee, and Auburn loses to Kentucky 10-3. Auburn fails to score a touchdown. Auburn loses again in Jordan-Hare Stadium, which was a recurring pattern under Hugh Freeze, completely destroying the home field advantage that Auburn likes to think that it enjoys, that it once did and no longer does. And you can blame those two men on the screen right there, primarily, but not solely, Hugh Freeze and John Cohen. And so the question of the day is, after they finally realized their mistake by firing Hugh Freeze on Sunday, can Auburn get it right after its Hugh Freeze mistake? We are about to discuss that subject. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. I am Scarbo. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you watch on YouTube, and of course, my YouTube channel is Kevin Scarbinsky Scarbo Knows. We would appreciate it. We'd appreciate it greatly if you would subscribe to the channel. We are continuing to grow with the considerable help of the executive producer from the Sidelines.live network, Brendan Martin, making everything work. Hello, Brendan Martin.
There you go.
There he is in the flesh.
Magically, I guess my AI just pops me in just whenever it hears my name. So there you go. It's the man behind the curtain. So.
It's so fond of you that we had to remove the curtain to let everyone see your smiling face.
I'm a camera hog. What do you want?
I know you are. I know you are. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Have a good show, sir. Thank you for my name.
Thank you, Brendan. And you should check out all the great shows on the Sidelines.live network. There are many of them full of insiders, great guests, great insight. Hopefully, we'll bring a little bit of that to you today. Thanks to our sponsor, Money Management Services. They are Birmingham's financial services firm. We are excited to have them as our sponsor. The Rice family has been in business since 1992. Located right here in the Birmingham area, but they can take care of you wherever you are. So we hope you will scan the QR code there, give them a ring. They will take great care of you, and we'll hear from my friends, the Rice family and Money Management Services, a little later in the show. So let's get into it. The inevitable end of the Hugh Freeze error came Sunday. No one was surprised, particularly after what we witnessed on Saturday night at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I'm glad I wasn't on the premises. I'm glad I only had to watch on television. Once I figured out how to watch college football on television, thank you very much, ESPN and YouTube TV. And by the way, YouTube TV, for all of its faults, and of course, it started out with a great product, low price. The price has skyrocketed, but the quality of the product is so superior to ESPN's app, whatever version of ESPN that you had to find on Saturday to be able to watch SEC football. Please, guys, get your act together. Because if I have to spend another football Saturday watching games through the ESPN app, through Hulu Plus, or whatever it is that my older son, Kaiser, had to help me navigate from his post at the University of Florida, where he goes to school with my other son, Cannon, I may tear my hair out what little I have left. Okay. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about where is Auburn? What is Auburn? Where does Auburn go from here? First of all, as always happens in these cases, and it's happening virtually every weekend now, when a head coach is let go, the school releases a statement. And these statements are an art form unto themselves. Because first of all, they don't say that they fired their head coach. And Auburn was no different. They said they were making a change in the leadership of their football program. That's only partially true because they kicked Hugh Freeze to the curb, but the rest of the leadership is still in place, which is the larger question we're going to get into the weeds into here is how do you expect to correct your mistake when the people who made the mistake in the first place are the ones charged with correcting the mistake? Who's on first? Let's look at the statement from John Cohen on Sunday. And here it is. I have informed Coach Freeze of my decision to make a change in leadership with the Auburn football program. Coach Freeze is, my emphasis here, a man of integrity. I don't think that word means what he thinks it means. And we are appreciative of his investment in Auburn and his, quote, his relentless work. I don't think that word means what he thinks it means. Over the last 3 years in bolstering our roster. The only thing relentless about Hugh Freeze, this is my aside, this is not part of the statement, was his attempt to lower his handicap. And he didn't deserve to play another 18 holes on Auburn's dime. I said that in today's column. Please check it out at al.com. Back to the statement. Our expectations for Auburn football are, my emphasis here, to annually compete for championships. We're going to dive into that little nugget in a moment. And the search for the next leader of Auburn football begins immediately. And like I said, the larger issue here is make a change in leadership with the Auburn football program. But if you have the same athletic director, the same athletic department, filled with people with a Mississippi State background, which has led some prominent Auburn people that I happen to speak to occasionally fear that John Cohen and company have turned Auburn into Mississippi State. And we'll see, we already know why that's not a good thing, particularly when it comes to football. We'll see some numbers to back that up in a moment. And the Board of Trustees is the same. The Board of Trustees has not been the same for a long, long time at Auburn. You've got people on there that don't like each other, that don't agree with each other, and that have varying levels of passion for Auburn football. Some too much. Looking at you, yellow fella. Some, not so much. Looking at you, Raymond Harbert. And those two guys are not bosom buddies. Let's just put it that way. So who's the real leadership here? And what kind of confidence do you have that Auburn has the kind of leadership necessary to hire the right coach to pull them out of this pit of despair in which they have put themselves, largely through their own decisions? Okay. So the first thing you have to do, the first thing you should do when you're changing coaches, look in the mirror, figure out who you are, figure out what you're capable of, be realistic, be ruthless in your self-assessment. And I'm not sure that is going to happen at Auburn. I'm not sure it happens at a lot of places. But that's the first thing that has to happen. So Auburn has to ask itself, what is Auburn? Let's look at some numbers that might help answer that question. All right. So I put this together. I did some scribbling on Sunday and some addition and some subtraction and multiplication. I pulled out all my mathematical skills. And I looked at the SEC standings because this is what matters most. You can pad your record with wins over Ball State and South Alabama, as Auburn has done this year. And they'll add another win against Mercer in a couple of weeks after Vanderbilt gets through with them. And don't you know Diego Pavia is a little sad today? Well, he's angry because his too late comeback attempt to beat Texas in Austin fell short, very short, if you watch that last Vanderbilt onside kick, which was so close to a recovery. And you just know if they'd gotten the ball back, Diego Pavia would have found a way to get them in the end zone and win the game. But it didn't. And so Diego Pavia, though, he's angry from that perspective, which is not good for Auburn, which has to go to Nashville Saturday. But he's also got to be a little sad because he doesn't get to put the final nail in Hugh Freeze's coffin. Because as you know, if you've been paying attention, Diego Pavia has administered, well, he helped dig Hugh Freeze's grave at Auburn. First of all, when he was with New Mexico State in what until Saturday was the worst loss of the Hugh Freeze era at Auburn, 31-10, I believe it was. It wasn't close. It was as embarrassing a loss as Auburn has suffered maybe ever until Saturday night when they couldn't even get in the end zone against Kentucky and Hugh Freeze couldn't figure out who to play quarterback. He started the guy from Stanford and Ashton Daniels, whose name almost escaped me. Then in a panic, he went to Jackson Arnold in the second half. And I don't care if maybe Cam Newton could have avoided the 7.5 sacks or whatever the ridiculous number that Kentucky rolled up. But the offensive line was a disaster. They made the Kentucky defense look like the 85 Chicago Bears or the 1988 Auburn Tigers or the 1992 Alabama Crimson Tide. And the Kentucky defense is none of those things. So I looked at the SEC standings since 2014 because SEC games matter most. And to the surprise of no one, Alabama, of course, has the best record in the conference. And I just included regular season games, not conference championship games or meetings in the playoff in these numbers. Alabama is 84-11 since 2014. Why did I use 2014? Let me get to that because I know some Auburn fans are going to get angry. You're going to say, why didn't you start with 2013 when Auburn was 7-1 in the SEC, when Auburn won the SEC championship, when Trey Mason and Nick Marshall ran wild all season long, when the kick six happened, when Auburn came up just short of a national championship. And I'll tell you why I didn't include that. Because this has been the problem at Auburn, is sustaining success. Auburn has found lightning in a bottle on a regular basis. We've said this before. Every Auburn coach from Pat Dye through Gus Malzahn did something special in year one or year two on the job. That long tradition ended with Bryan Harsin, and it did not restart with Hugh Freeze. We'll see if the next guy can do something spectacular right off the bat. So that's why I started with 2014, because Auburn had a great season in 2013, a memorable season in 2013. All credit to Gus Malzahn and that team for what they accomplished. So what did they do since? Not so much. They are down. You have to get through Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Missouri, and then Tennessee to get to Auburn in 9th place among the 14 SEC teams that have been playing in the conference since 2014. Obviously, we can't include Texas and Oklahoma here. Although, by adding Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC immediately pushed Auburn down 2 spots because Auburn is not at the level of either of those programs right now. So, since 2014, Auburn is 9th in the SEC with a 43-53 conference record in regular season games. Behind Tennessee, just ahead of a conglomeration of Mississippi State, Kentucky, and South Carolina, with Arkansas and Vanderbilt bringing up the rear. Okay? All right. That's part the responsibility of Gus Malzahn and Bryan Harsin and Hugh Freeze. But I thought, okay, so let's narrow it down. Let's see how those numbers changed by putting more weight on what's happened just over the last 5 years, which in Auburn's case means after they fired Gus Malzahn or after they made a change in football leadership in the program by paying Gus his $21.5 million buyout to go away. I heard someone made a great point about this. I've seen people calling Auburn, Chris Lowe, my friend, now with On3, calling Auburn buyout U. And, of course, the great answer that Auburn fans have immediately clapped back with is, wait a minute. Auburn's paying 3 buyouts. They've had to buy it. They bought out Gus Malzahn for 21 point something million. They bought out Bryan Harsin for 16 million or so. They're buying out Hugh Freeze for 15 million or so. And if you add all 3 of those together, that's still less money than LSU's paying Brian Kelly if they stick to the contract, and Penn State's paying James Franklin, and certainly more than Texas A&M is still paying Jimbo Fisher. So there you go. Auburn at least is more economical. They spread their buyout money among many candidates. They don't pile it all on one. And they probably will do something similar this time. So Auburn, 9th in the SEC since 2014. So let's look at now where Auburn stands in the SEC standings since 2021. Obviously, they have dropped. They are now in 12th place. This is hard to believe. If you've been following Auburn football as long as I have, and I know sometimes Auburn people believe that their program is greater than it actually is, that it has accomplished more than it actually has. But Auburn does have a proud tradition and should be proud of its tradition. So if you take any 5-year period of time and you find yourself 12th among the 14 SEC schools that were existent for that entire period of time, that were part of the conference for that stretch, that is horrible. That is abominable. That is not what Auburn football is, was, or should be. 11-27, folks. 11-27. 6 of those wins by Hugh Freeze. Down there with Mississippi State, the only school that has a worse record in the conference since 2021. And then Vanderbilt in 14th place, because for all the good things Clark Lee has done, particularly with Team Pavia on board, they still were 0-8 in the conference a couple of years ago and not so good before that. So now I wanted to look at, all right, so we know how bad Auburn has been since 2021, primarily because they let Alan Green, first of all, because they hired Alan Green, because Stephen Leath, the worst president in Auburn history, hired Alan Green, the worst athletic director in Auburn history, and they let him hire Bryan Harsin, who we thought was a slam dunk as the worst football coach hire in Auburn history. I think there's competition now when you consider Hugh Freeze and what happened and didn't happen on his watch. So let's look at the change, all right? Let's look at how these teams moved up and down the ladder if you include the entire period from 2014 to present, and then where they've been since 2021. So what is Auburn Part 3? Brendan, if you will, let's look at that graphic. And these are how these programs have changed position since 2021, whether they've gone up in the pecking order or dropped down. Tennessee and South Carolina both have moved up 4 spots in that time. Obviously, that's due to the good work of Josh Heupel. And by the way, Tennessee fans, if you are questioning Josh Heupel because your Vols lost to Oklahoma on Saturday night, you need a re-education camp. Maybe you just need to go back and watch some of the highlights from the Derek Dooley era, the Butch Jones era, the Jeremy Pruitt era. Although we are happy for Jeremy. He has apparently come to some agreement with the NCAA regarding his show cause penalty that will allow him to work as an analyst at Jacksonville State. And good for him. He's a good football coach. He'll do well. He'll definitely help the Gamecocks. So Tennessee's they moved up. Shane Beamer's done a nice job at South Carolina, not so much this year. And he fired Mike Shula. Man, the old memories just flooding back. Yes, think about this, folks. If you have any history or know the history of the state of Alabama, that Mike Shula and Hugh Freeze got fired on the same day. Mike Shula as the offensive coordinator in Columbia at South Carolina. He was the first to go yesterday, and then Hugh Freeze followed suit. Interesting the way history comes full circle. Ole Miss, obviously, with the job Lane Kiffin has done, we will talk more about him in a moment. He's the most sought-after commodity in this country, other than beef at an affordable price. Arkansas, which tells you Sam Pittman did some good things. They went up 2 spots. Georgia went from number 2 to number 1. They flip-flopped with Alabama. Not much to choose between the two programs there. Kentucky, Mark Stoops. I'm not saying he's the Undertaker and he's popping out of the coffin every time you think he's dead, but he found a way on Saturday night with a freshman quarterback who didn't exactly look like Tim Couch for much of the night. Missouri stayed the same. Vanderbilt stayed the same in their spots. Alabama dropped, as I said, from 1 to 2. Texas A&M dropped by 1. That's a reflection of the end of the Jimbo Fisher era, I should say. Not error. Hiring Jimbo was not an error. It didn't work out the way A&M thought it would. LSU dropped a couple of spots. Direct reflection of Brian Kelly's work in Baton Rouge, which is why he is no longer in Baton Rouge. Mississippi State dropped 3 spots, although I think there's some reason to feel optimism about Jeff Lebby. Good to see the Bulldogs get that win over Arkansas and probably putting a nail in Bobby Petrino's coffin in his attempt to be the full-time Arkansas coach and to remove the interim tag. I can't imagine the folks in Fayetteville would do that after what they've seen from that team with Petrino in charge. And then there's the bottom 2. Auburn has dropped 3 spots in the last 5 years, because of the last 5 years, I should say. And Florida has dropped 5 positions in the standings. That's why Florida is looking for a new coach, and that's why Auburn is looking for a new coach. Because the guys that they hired the last time around, in Florida's case, and the end of the Dan Mullen years before that, the way that dropped off, the original promise not fulfilled, and then Auburn swinging and missing wildly on Bryan Harsin and then Hugh Freeze. And that's why those programs have dropped. That's why those programs are in search of new life, new hope, a new beginning. So who's going to bring that to Auburn? Who has the right stuff? Who would understand the territory? Who would willingly walk into a place that doesn't have the greatest administration, doesn't have the most aligned trustees? And I love this alignment. I think it was Chris Vanini in The Athletic who was ranking coaching jobs, open coaching jobs. And he talked about the alignment at Auburn. Okay, an alignment of incompetence, perhaps, when it comes to football. Like I said, the same people that hired Hugh Freeze, and I include the athletic administration, the trustees, the power brokers, the decision makers who have sway behind the scenes, that's pretty much the same crowd. And they're not all on the same page. I can tell you that. I can tell you that, as I've said earlier, there is a concern behind the scenes at Auburn among true Auburn people that there's a divide in the athletic department between the Auburn people who were there, have been there a long time, and the Mississippi State crowd that John Cohen brought in. Those folks are not aligned always. I can tell you that. The trustees are not always aligned. And I pointed out the difference between Jimmy Rain and Raymond Harbert, 2 of the heavy hitters on that board. They are not always on the same page. I can guarantee you that. So, who's next? No. If you're watching live or you're watching this on YouTube and you're looking at these pictures, these snapshots, these are 4 coaches whose names have been mentioned. Let's go through them one at a time and shoot them down as thoroughly as we can. Jimbo Fisher, look, I like Jimbo. I've known Jimbo a long time. He has a long history in this state, playing at Samford, coaching at Auburn. He knows the territory. He knows the landscape. He knows the players behind the scenes. One reason why his name is being brought up, because there may be a person or 2 or 3 behind the scenes at Auburn who is quite fond of Jimbo Fisher and thinks that he is a better coach than he showed the last couple of years. But here's my biggest question about Jimbo. What is the one thing that we can say with certainty about Hugh Freeze's tenure. He never got the quarterback position right. He didn't get it right when he brought in Peyton Thorne from Michigan State. He didn't get it right when he brought Peyton Thorne back for a second season. And he didn't get it right. Boy, did he not get it right when he brought in both Jackson Arnold and Ashton Daniels. Neither of whom, as we witnessed Saturday night, is capable of being a winning quarterback in the SEC. What was the one factor above all others that sank Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M? It wasn't overall talent. He's an excellent recruiter. It was one position in particular, the position that he is supposed to be an expert in identifying and developing, and that's quarterback. He never got the quarterback position right at Texas A&M. Kellen Mond did some good things. He had some injury issues. Jimbo did with his quarterbacks. That's we'll give him that. But he never truly got that position right. He never really got it right at Florida State, with the exception of Jameis Winston. And when Jameis Winston was the starter, they won a national championship, beating Auburn at the end of the 2013 season. And then they went undefeated through the next season until Oregon ran them off the road in the first 14 playoff semifinal. So you have had a horrible run of questionable quarterback play, to be polite, at Auburn. And you're going to bring in a guy who hasn't gotten the quarterback position right since 2013, 2014? Seriously? All right, next, DJ Durkin. He is the interim coach. His defense has done an outstanding job. And one of the greatest graphics, one of the greatest statistics that we've seen pop up on social media in recent weeks is the number of teams in the country who have yet to give up more than 24 points in a game. It is a short list. It included 4 teams before Saturday, and then Miami got beat by SMU. Kudos to Rhett Lashley. And Auburn, if you could hire Rhett Lashley, you would be fortunate. I don't think you can. He, of course, agreed to an extension at SMU. He has everything he needs to continue getting to the college football playoff, which he did a year ago with the Mustangs, and Auburn has yet to do since the 14 playoff began in 2014. The 3 teams, it's down to 3, teams that have not given up more than 24 points in a game this year. Ohio State, number 1. Indiana's number 2 in the country. Neither one of those has given up more than 24 in a game. And guess who else is on that list? Auburn. The Auburn team has yet to give up more than 24 points in a game. Xavier Atkins has been a demon. Keldrick Falk, outstanding. The secondary, Rashawn Pleasant, has been just making play after play. Look what he did at Arkansas in the fourth quarter to save that game, or Hugh Freeze would have been gone a week earlier. So the defense of DJ Durkin has been outstanding. All credit to him. And maybe they'll find a spark over these last 3 games. They play Vanderbilt in Nashville this week. Then they get Mercer. And then they go, well, they don't go. They welcome Alabama to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Even if, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to stand on this hill, and I'll die on this hill if I have to. I don't care if Auburn goes 3-0 under DJ Durkin as interim coach. You cannot hire him as head coach. And I'm not even referring to the tragic death of one of his players at Maryland, Jordan McNair, a couple of weeks after he collapsed in the summer of 2018 in an off-season workout from heat stroke. Even if DJ Durkin is not responsible, even if you don't hold him responsible for the death of Jordan McNair, you cannot make him the head coach. And here's why. Have you looked at his record? I have. He was the head coach for 2 years at Maryland. In that time, he was 10-15 overall. He was 5-13 in the Big Ten. Against ranked opponents, 1-8. This sounds like we're reading off Hugh Freeze's resume at Auburn. And in those games against ranked opponents, he didn't just lose 8 out of 9. His defense, and remember, he's a defensive guy, doing a great job as Auburn's defensive coordinator this year. His defense allowed an average of 45.3 points per game in 9 games against ranked teams. In the 8 losses in those 9 games against ranked teams, Maryland lost by an average of 38.4 points a game. Let me read you a couple of the scores with DJ Durkin as head coach at Maryland. Michigan 59, Maryland 3. Ohio State 62, Maryland 3. Ohio State 62, Maryland 14. Penn State 66, Maryland 3. End of discussion. And then you also see on that graphic the smiling face of Carnell Cadillac Williams. I saw my colleague Roy Williams at Roy Johnson. I'm sorry, Roy Williams was a colleague of mine when I worked full time at AL.com. Roy Johnson. Now I also have worked with him at AL.com. Roy Johnson. I didn't get a chance to read it. He wrote a column today suggesting that Auburn should hire Carnell Williams. Clearly, Roy Johnson does not know why Carnell Williams departed the Auburn coaching staff after his first year there under Hugh Freeze. I'm not going to get into those details, but let's just say those details make it clear to the people who do know them and who will make this hire that Carnell Williams is not going to be the next Auburn coach. I have plenty of respect for Carnell Williams as a player, as a coach in a lot of ways. And I will say the most electric that Auburn football has been in years and years and years was when he was the interim coach in his first home game against Texas A&M. That place was the epitome of what Auburn can be. But one game does not define a coaching tenure. One game should not earn you a coaching job. It shouldn't earn you a coaching extension, nor should it earn you a pink slip. You have to look at the body of work. Carnell Williams is not going to be the next Auburn coach. Neither is the guy to his left in that graphic, and that is one Lane Kiffin. You had your shot, Auburn, 3 years ago. You took your shot, and all credit for that. We've been over this. Lane Kiffin gave every indication to Auburn he was going to take the job. And then, this has been well documented, his daughter Landry and her friends tugged at Lane's heartstrings. He saw the light. He understood the importance of family, his family being more important than the Auburn family. And he decided to stay in Oxford. And given what they've accomplished since, given where the Rebels are now, flying towards a playoff berth, maybe an SEC championship berth, maybe a run at a national championship, he made the right call. He's not coming to Auburn now. If he leaves Oxford, and this is to be determined, I think the most likely place he will go is the University of Florida. Obviously, Florida wants him, has made that clear behind the scenes, financially, etc. I don't think it would be LSU, although some people think that's a possibility. Don't discount the NFL and the Miami Dolphins, say, as another option that Lane Kiffin may have that may interest him, or he may do nothing. But if he leaves, I will be shocked if it is to go to Auburn. I think that door has closed. Okay, now that we've shot down based on our information and our connections and our relationships, some of these names that have already been tossed out there, and I will say this, just in general about coaching searches, this maxim applies often. Thems that know don't tell, and thems that tell don't know. Okay, so who's left? Who can Auburn hire? I've already made this clear. I've already told you I think there are 2 candidates who have some Pat Dye in them, which is what I think Auburn needs to get back to the days of competing for championships. And let's go back to that phrase of John Cohen. Auburn's expectation is to compete annually for championships. That's great to have that goal. That's fantastic to have that kind of vision. However, realistically, Auburn hasn't competed for a championship since 2017 when it played in the SEC championship game and lost a rematch to Georgia. Auburn hasn't competed annually for championships since the late 1980s when Pat Dye was the coach. And they won 3 straight SEC titles, 87, 88, and 89. Had to share 1 or 2 of them. That was before the SEC championship game. But Auburn was right at the top of the conference under Pat Dye. So if you want to get back there, you want to get close to there, it might make some sense to look for some coaches that have some Pat Dye in them. They're not posers. They're not televangelists. They're ball coaches. That is what Auburn needs above all else. And John Summerall from Tulane on the left side of the screen and Brent Key from Georgia Tech on the right side of the screen, those are ball coaches. That's not just my opinion, or it is my opinion based on people that I talk to that know these guys personally, that know their backstory, that know what motivates them, that know what moves them. And yeah, they just lost. They just lost their last games. And Tulane got run by UTSA in San Antonio, which most conference teams that walk into the Alamo Dome, that's their fate. UTSA has done a nice job. Jeff Traylor's done a nice job there. And yes, Georgia Tech lost to NC State on Saturday night, their first loss of the season. But Auburn will give these guys better resources than they've ever had before, a larger and more loyal fan base than they've ever had behind them before, and an opportunity to compete in the best conference in college football. And I believe if Auburn has the people who could sell these guys on that vision, and then, this is maybe the hardest part of all, hire them and get the hell out of the way. Let them run the show. Let them decide who to recruit. More importantly, let them decide who to hire. And I don't care how good a job DJ Durkin has done. If you go into this coaching search with the thought that you're going to tell whoever you want to hire that you want them to keep DJ Durkin on their staff, you are doing it wrong. You need to hire a strong leader and let them lead. Maybe they'll think that DJ Durkin is the right guy for the defensive coordinator position, but that's got to be their call. That's got to be your next head coach's decision. Not yours as a booster, not yours as a trustee, not yours as the athletic director. You hire a strong leader and let him lead. Is Auburn willing to do that? Is Auburn capable of doing that? I can't answer those questions in the affirmative, but I have my doubts. I have some hope, but I also have some doubts. But I will say this. This state, football in this state is better when Auburn is good. Football in the SEC, to me, is better when Auburn is good. Auburn has not been good for some time. Auburn is not close, despite what Hugh Freeze kept saying again and again and again. And that sad plea for patience in his post-game Saturday night. Auburn people they have the patience of Job. If you don't know that story, read your Bible. They showed up on Saturday night. They will show up against Mercer. And you better believe on the last Saturday in November, when Alabama comes to town, they will show up. And they will be loud, and they will be proud, and they will do everything in their power to awaken Auburn Jesus, to bring back and wake up the echoes, to beat their biggest rival for the first time since 2019. So Auburn, yes, there are doubts, and yes, there are reasons not to believe, but there are also reasons why this can be, despite the other coaching jobs that are open, an outstanding landing place for someone who's hungry to be successful in the best college football conference in the country. Auburn has what it needs if Auburn can get out of its own way. Because who needs rivals like Alabama and Georgia when far too often you are your own worst enemy? Can Auburn get it together? We shall see. We'll be following every step of the way. Thank you for following. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is Scarbo Knows. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. I'm almost out of breath. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. We definitely appreciate it. And make sure you check out our sponsor, Money Management Services. Good friends of mine, the Rice family. They'll take great care of you. Hear what they have to say next. You guys have a great day. See ya.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.